Christian McCollum back here with another episode of the PlayAction Pod. March is here, and we continue to dive into some of the top teams around the country. And I've got my man Joe Cook from Inside Texas, part of the On3 network at InsideTexas.com, to talk some Texas Longhorns. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Glad to talk about a non-bubble team. That's kind of rare with Texas basketball after the past few years.
Well, you weren't a bubble team last year, but you did bust some brackets with the first round upset loss to Abilene Christian in last year's tournament. Coming into this season, new coach. What were the expectations coming into this season?
Well, when you kind of have to go all the way back to April 1st, 2021. That's when Chris Beard got the job. Texas took him from Texas Tech. And when he showed up, there was literally zero players on the roster. So he had to rebuild a roster. But the thing is, he walked into his press conference and started talking about being a Monday night program, which of course is being in the national title game. And that's a place that he himself has been. Well, he set those own expectations, and he put together a team with some of the best transfers in the country and some returnees that got a lot of preseason praise. A lot of places had them as a top five team. They haven't played at a top five level. They've played at a very good level in a very good conference, but right now they're still a step behind Kansas and Baylor, and they're a step behind Texas Tech. Not too far behind them, but still behind them nonetheless. It's been a really good year. 20-win season, not a bubble team, over 500 in the Big 12. So he's already come in and done a lot of very good stuff and a very good season, especially compared to a lot of what Texas has done in basketball this decade. But we'll see if they're able to meet that Monday night standard. That's top five territory. It doesn't look like that, but that's why they play the game still too.
Yeah, so who are some of the key players he brought in this offseason? It seems like it's been a really balanced attack this season for Texas.
So the main I guess the main two guys that they brought in and really relied on are Marcus Carr, who went to Minnesota, and Timmy Allen, who was first team All Pac-12 guy at Utah. Uh, those guys were kind of volume scorers, and Marcus Carr has kind of had a difficult time adjusting towards being a point guard and facilitator, and not as much a guy who just kind of gets his shot up whenever he wants. He's grown in that regard, but he's had ups and downs, especially over the past few weeks. Timmy Allen's the team MVP. The best way to describe him is he's got old man game. He's a below the rim player. He's got good touch around the elbow and kind of within that 12 to 15-foot range. And he's one of the better rebounders. And he's also really good when he's the point man, when he's bringing the ball up the floor. So those are the two main guys. Of late, Christian Bishop has really come into his own as a real hard-nosed rebounder and guy who's not really polished offensively, but can still hustle. And then, of course, the other thing is they brought four guys back. Andrew Jones, who everybody knows about his leukemia battle, guy who's a pretty good spot shooter. Courtney Ramey, combo guard. Chase Febris, three-point guy who's started to see more minutes of late, and Brock Cunningham, who basically any opposing coach would just describe as a pest. So they did have four guys come back, but the main cogs in this offense, and even sometimes the defense this year, have been Timmy Allen playing that point forward, kind of slashing three-ish, four-ish role, and then Marcus Carr, who's probably not a true point guard, but that's the job he's been given at times this year.
Another guy they brought in this year off the transfer portal was Tre Mitchell from UMass, who was one of the best players in the A10, an extremely skilled big man who did some good stuff at Texas, but he's left the team here recently. What's the latest with Trey?
So the way the program described it was that he was taking a personal leave of absence. They've talked to him. Chris Beard in public settings has said they support him. He also said that Tre Mitchell has not given any indications of a transfer at all or anything like that. But there have been times on social media when I believe it's his dad has basically criticized the program. So it doesn't really look like he's going to be making a return. The last game he played in was the game at Baylor. And that was a really tough game for the Longhorns. And this is kind of a feature, not a bug, of a Chris Beard program. And I think it's almost a feature of a lot of different programs now in the age of the one-time transfer, to where if you're upset, you can kind of go. And Chris Beard is a my way or the highway type coach. I know everybody is, but the guy coached on Bob Knight's bench for I think what 10 years. So there's a lot of Bob Knight in Chris Beard, and even going back to his time at Texas Tech, there was always one to two guys who didn't make it through the season, and unfortunately, sometimes they're the really talented guys. But like I said, it's Chris Beard's way or the highway. So it seems like that's what we're seeing with Tre Mitchell. We saw it earlier this year with Jalen Tyson, who was a top 100 forward from I think the Dallas Fort Worth area, and he's already transferred out to Texas Tech. So you see that every now and then with Chris Beard, and it just happened to be one was a reserve guy in Jalen Tyson, and the other was a starter or six man who'd play about 15 to 20 minutes a game in Tre Mitchell.
You talked about Texas trying to catch Texas Tech and Baylor and Kansas here. They'll have another shot at Kansas here on Saturday, wrap up the regular season. But what will you want to see from them in the last regular season game moving into the conference tournament to get an idea that they're really hitting their stride as they reach the NCAA tournament?
It really is all about shooting. Texas played Baylor really closely on Big Monday, final game ever at the Frank Irwin Center. But they shot, I think, 4 for 23 from behind the arc. And that last make was when the game was already decided, with less than 10 seconds left. So if they're able to shoot, this team will go a long way because they have a phenomenal defense. Chris Beard can coach defense, I think, with some of the best in the country, and they have some guys who can hit shots in the flow of the offense. But they really have struggled a lot this year from behind the arc. So I'm looking for that. When they played Kansas a couple weeks ago on Big Monday, that was a game where they had another really struggling shooting night. But that defense came through, and they used a very unique tactic on Ochai Agbaji, who's a Big 12 Player of the Year candidate, to basically deny him every single step of the way. So I'm looking for that if they can continue to take out some teams' best players, especially guards. The Texas just really isn't athletic at guard, and that's how Baylor killed them this past Monday. James Flagler or James Akinjo, Adam Flagler, guys who can beat basically anybody in the country off the dribble, and anybody in the country included Texas. So those guys had 19 points apiece. So I'm looking for shooting capabilities over these next few weeks, especially from beyond the arc, because that's been a volatile aspect and often a weakness. And if they can start limiting other teams' best players, kind of like they did against Kansas a few weeks ago, and unlike the way they did this past Monday against Baylor.
You kind of touched on it there, but what's kind of a generic matchup that Texas may not want to face in the first weekend of the tournament that could present them problems and potentially see them get picked off early?
So, what I think a lot of Texas fans are hoping is that they're kind of on that 4-5 line. So they're going to be playing a 12 or a 13, and they're hoping that they don't get, the the Mid American champion, or they don't get if the West Coast Conference is a two bid league outside of Gonzaga, they hope they don't get like that second team. They kind of want to see a power conference team who snuck into the bubble, because those experienced teams, if you're winning your conference tournament, you probably have some experienced guard play. You probably have one guy who's got some sort of difference making ability. So kind of think about what Oral Roberts was able to do last year, coming from that 15 team with a couple of the players they had. One of them who just burned Texas this year because he transferred to Texas Tech. So they want to avoid those teams with experienced guards or athletic guards. They've been able to manage not having size. The one of the biggest weaknesses this year has been not having a true rim protector. Jericho Sims, despite being 6'9", could jump like a 7-footer could last year, and he could also defend all five positions. He was a really special player. They have nobody who can really do either of those things this year. So I think what the matchup Texas fans want to see is they want to see like one of those bubble teams that just snuck in, maybe get a first four matchup, because I think aren't 12s often thrown into the first four, either 12s or
Yeah,
11s. I can't
11s.
remember. They don't want to see a team with a lot of experience with capable guards. They want to see, they just don't want to be out athleted. So that's kind of their concern. But still, I think there's this semblance among Texas fans as well that even just one NCAA tournament win will mark a very good year. I'm not all about that. I take value in the regular season still, but of course, I know that a lot of Texas basketball fans, because it's kind of what the bridge to football season is, they just want to see tournament success. So I think if Chris Beard can just get one win, because his predecessor could not manage to get a single win, they will be very, very happy with this year and looking forward to what's coming in years to come.
Joe, thanks a lot. We really appreciate it. We'll be following all your coverage throughout the month. Again, go to InsideTexas.com for all your Texas coverage. You can follow them on Twitter as well at Inside Texas, InsideTexas.com. Joe, thanks a lot for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christian.